Good morning, good evening, and hello everybody. Imperial is a unique roguelike RPG set in the original world with a special focus on dungeon delving, combat heavy and boss fight focused. Imperial has you exploring the deeps of an ancient ziggurat and fighting throughout the hordes of machines in pursuit of the forgotten secret. Throughout built on strong foundations, Imperial is not the most compelling game from a design standpoint and suffers from noticeable problems and with difficulty and learning curve, issues that are sure to put some players off. The game begins with a cutscene preluding an expedition, basically to an ancient monolith on the unexplored planet. That expedition is not going well, and it succeeds now rests off the shoulders of the skeleton crew led by alcoholic and the skills of a newly arrived mercenary volunteer. With a lot of danger and very little pay, you delve into the halls of the ancient ziggurat and battle the mechanical golems with hoping to uncover the secrets of your long-lost civilization. The tone is grim and the odds are stacked against you, which adds to the atmosphere of tension that are the game maintains throughout your journey. The game is advertised as an RPG. I would venture to say that it's actually more of a roguelike. Imperial's features and continuously story that unfolds as you complete quests, but it lacks traditional RPG elements like the character leveling or more structured linear progression throughout an expansive world. Instead, you are given a central hub area stopped by a few NPCs and a series of miniature dungeons that you enter, clear, and loot. These dungeons offer procedurally dropped gear for and items, and while the first few are provided to you in sequence, you discover future ones randomly by exploring other so-called cartograms. If Imperial is RPG, it leans heavily into in dungeon crawler aspects, making them the primary game loop. As you might expect, this means that Imperial is very combat heavy. The combat system is fairly straightforward. You have 7 types of weapons. I'm joking, just like I don't know how many of them, but like let's say several, each with distinct playstyles, a basic attack button and defensive move that functions as both as a dodge and a parry depending on the timing and the input. You frequently find yourself fighting off waves of enemies using your primary attacks along with a handful of gadgets to deal damage while avoiding incoming blows. New gear gathered from the completion dungeons is infinite at the base to generate these stats and mostly provides different improvements to your numbers during the combat. Abilities can be purchased and used based on the kind of weapon you have, and the most impactful part of combat throughout be warned, you can often still take damage during the animations of your ability cast. It is simple, certainly nothing revolutionary, but it generally works well. You grasp the basics of the combat quickly and the piece is fast enough to do the simplicity doesn't wear thin too quickly. However, the real issue lies in how the developers choose to balance the game. Imperial places a heavy emphasis on two things, the boss fights and the hordes of enemies. Frequently, these two elements combine, resulting in boss battles where smaller enemies flood the area, making already difficult encounters even more overwhelming. The problem is that enemies tend to have several frustrating things in common. They hit harder than you, they have more health, they recover faster, they are usually quicker than the player. This leaves little room for error, even if early encounters. Many enemy attacks in Imperial suffer from the poor telegraphing, often only signaled by the small loading bar above their heads. This is frequently leads to the situation where you don't even see the attack coming. You might be forced to turn your back on the enemy only to get hit by an incredibly fast gap-locking attack um, skills that wipes out of half of your health bar. Getting stunned in this game is feels terrible, honestly. A stun usually leaves you unable to act for a second or two, plenty of the time for enemy to kill you outright. Since nearly every enemy in the game can end you in 3 or 4 hits, this mechanic becomes less of a challenge and more of a source of frustration. Fighting shield and enemies can be a slog, and dealing with both ranged and melee attacks at the once feel unnecessary punishing. It's now what I call Souls-like difficulty. It's Dark Souls game that's usually feels devastated. When I die in those games, it's typically due to my own mistakes, mismanaging stamina, dodging at the wrong time, or any other gameplay issue. Being greedy with the attacks, and however, most that feels like they were outside of your control. This game is unwinnable, but the difficulty spikes dramatically as clean as the second level, which you can reach in under an hour, and it remains punishing from there and out. Artistically, Imperial is a bit of mixed bag in terms of character design and foil of clothing to armor to be fairly generic and unsurprised. The more realistic characters models, the sci-fi neon aesthetics on the lot of gear didn't really capture my interest. On the other hand, I throughout the environments was gorgeous, creative, detailed, and visually interesting. Also liked the design of the enemies, and it almost feels like there was a disconnect between different aspects of the game visuals direction. I can't say for sure why this is, but it doesn't create an uneven impression when it comes to the game's art. This game is interesting take on the genre and unique focus on everything favorite part with the RPGs. However, the simplistic combat is poorly balanced, with a difficulty curve that becomes very difficult as early in the game's second level. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.